Hello and welcome to Climbing Daily. During a recent climbing trip, I met a fascinating lady called Roanne Voorst. Now, she's an author and researcher who became interested in the topic of fear within climbing. She spoke to a bunch of famous climbers, including Alex Honnold, Hazel Findlay and Steph Davis, and off the back of that, wrote a book called Fear. I'll let her explain more.
My name is Roanne Voorst. I'm a Dutch author. I'm also a researcher, so I've done a PhD on risk and coping behavior. So how do people behave when they're really scared? That's kind of my specialty. And then I moved from observing that in some of the world's most dangerous places towards more voluntary risk-taking. And that was climbing for me. And I am a climber myself, and I decided I wanted to move my research towards the world of climbing and how do the best and bravest climbers of the world deal with fear. I know for me that's a thing in climbing, fear. It really just started with me in the gym experiencing fear when I started climbing. And I started sharing this experience with other climbers who always looked to me as though they were never afraid. You know, the people having fun at the crag, and then there was me trembling at the crag basically. But I've noticed that as soon as I started sharing that I was afraid, a lot of people opened up and told me their experiences, right? Because all of the climbers I know have dealt with fear at some point at their lives. And so from that idea, at some point I just started emailing the bravest people of the world, in my eyes, right? Like Alex Honnold and the Lynn Hills and Catherine Desteville. And I emailed them and just said, can we talk about this theme? Because I feel that there are many books about how we can physically train ourselves, but there's very few books that really go into depth about how can you deal with fear and how can you overcome it? Like, which precise methods do you use? And to my surprise, all of them said yes. And they said the same. They said, we've rarely been interviewed really about this. Everybody asks what we eat, you know, how do we hangboard? But nobody really asks how do you deal with fear if it comes up. And so we ended up doing all the interviews and I ended up writing a pretty awesome book. What was insightful for me to learn about Alex Honnold, for example, is that he does experience fear quite often. It was almost kind of a relief for me to hear, like, oh, he's a human, he's not a robot, you know? And so he was explaining to me that, of course, when he's climbing and a piece of rock comes loose, he'll be, you know, trembling, his breath will go faster, his heartbeat will go up. Basically, he has the same physical response that I would have in such a place. So that for one, was interesting. And then he has a couple of strategies that he uses to calm himself down. And I think this is the difference between the brave people and the perhaps not so brave people. It's not that they were born fearless, it's more that they have learned how to calm themselves down instantly, while perhaps you and I can't. We need some minutes or some hours, or some of us, you know, a bit longer.
Honestly, I found it quite scary to watch you. I actually had to walk away.
Yeah, but watching soloing is always way more scarier than doing soloing.
Yeah.
I mean, I find the same thing if I watch somebody. I'm sure if I watched somebody soloing that phase, I'd be like, I'm not into this, and I would just like leave and like let them do their thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not something that's like fun to watch.
One thing that I find interesting is that he explained to me that he gets a tunnel vision when he gets really afraid. So he sees details, but he doesn't see that one big jug over there, right? And I think that's very recognizable. So what he does is he tries to broaden his scope by looking to the front, but at the same time trying to see what is on the outer edges of your sight. And he was describing it as a soft gaze. And when he does that, automatically his face relaxes. And if you do that, psychologically, your body will relax. Also, your heartbeat will go down, the adrenaline level will go down as well. And so for him, that's one kind of tiny trick, but an interesting trick that he uses. When I spoke to Hazel Findlay, this was another thing, because she's also, I mean, she is one of those climbers. She seems fearless. She is kick-ass rock chick.
Hazel's a very impressive climber. She has a pretty unique skill set. She's very good at traditional climbing. She's very good at keeping her head together, and she's experienced.
And I told her this. I said, "You're kick-ass rock chick." And she started laughing. And she's like, "I'm not the bravest. I really am afraid of getting injured actually all the time." And she says that she's being portrayed as though she's fearless, but she doesn't feel that way at all. In fact, I think from all of the interviewees who I spoke to, she was perhaps the most serious about training her fear muscle, as she calls it. So what she means with that is more so her fear, the muscle that helps you to overcome or to deal with fear, so the coping muscle. And the way in which she does that is after a season where she's been bouldering, for example, indoors, you know, it's winter, you gotta do something, she does it indoors. Then she'll get more afraid the first couple of times when she's outdoors again. And so she'll take it really serious, a couple of hours per session, where she'll train together with her body, tell him or her, the belayer, that she will train her falling again, that she will train her fear muscle in, I won't get injured if I make this fall. So she does it in a very typical way. She'll make falls that go, you know, further and further, not clipping perhaps the next set, the next quick draw, or, you know, whatever works for her, and she'll repeat that. And then she was emphasizing that she doesn't go so fast. And I think this was interesting because when I was doing a lead course, I remember in my gym, the people made me make a big fall. You know, basically they said, do shock therapy, make one big fall and you'll be over it. Which did exactly the opposite because my body remembered all the fear. And Hazel said, that's the worst you can do because your fear muscle will be injured if you do that. Instead, go so slow that it feels almost a bit boring. So, you know, make tiny falls that you hardly feel, but just to make them part of your practice. And instead of climbing in a way and avoiding falling, make it really inherent to climbing, make it really part of your practice. And that's what she does every season again.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit nervous now, Alex.
What I found in my research on fear is that I think it's one of the major things that is holding us back, sometimes even without knowing, because I get to speak to a lot of people about fear, and even the word itself can, you know, confuse people sometimes, because you get, you know, cool guys saying, oh, I don't really mind falling, I'm not afraid. But then they might have a fear of failure. You know, they might get over anxious in their project, or they might have this thing where they never commit to that one move. You know, it can be really subtle. And I think it's just one of the biggest hindrances to real progress, because in order to cope with fear in a way that keeps you successful despite of stress, because it's nothing more than a stress physical response, you need to be aware of the fact that you are afraid. And for some people they are, but they'll freeze and they can't work with it. For others, they don't even know they're afraid. You know, they think it's the mistake of the belayer, it's the mistake of the weather, it's, you know, they're too short, it's the rock, it's slippery. But perhaps it's just you not able to deal with all the stress and that big goal of wanting to send your project. And that's another type of fear.
At one point I looked up and right and saw there were like 30 people standing there watching and everyone's silent and everyone's like, oh.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, ignore that.
Yeah.
Just focus on
It's a bit like a church, you know, it's just like,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
It was awesome to watch, so yeah,
thanks.
Thank you very much.
The book consists of 15 chapters, so there's 15 extreme athletes. And what I really like about the book and what I really wanted to bring about was not only that each of them told me or tells the reader about how they approach fear, but really give their precise methods about what it is exactly that they do on the wall when fear creeps up on them. And that for me was really insightful, and I hope it will be of use for other people so that you know exactly what Alex does or what Lynn Hill does, and hopefully people can copy paste or practice what kind of method works for them, because it's such a personal thing. So the book is available now pretty much everywhere online, and I can't wait for people to respond and let me know how it's working for them. I'm getting the first, reactions now. I'm getting emails and people are really excited, and I'm excited. I'm practicing the things in the book. It's kind of working.
It's fantastic and well worth a read, and we stock it in the Epic TV shop, so the link is in the description below if you want to buy it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.